Have you ever thought, why do I suck at fantasy football? Welcome. This is the Commissioner Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome to another episode with the Commissioner. Again, here to try to help you have some fun playing fantasy football and maybe get some championships. But more importantly, again, have some fun. It's a long football season. So those Sundays, those Mondays, those Thursday nights are pretty special for me. I get to have fun, sit back, relax, watch the team play, watch my guys play. So it's a blast for me, and hopefully this season you guys have a blast as well. And I'm here to prepare you for that. So if you haven't gotten to your drafts yet, I'm here to talk about the third round rankings. I've done the first round, second round, and now I'm here to do the third round. Again, the key things about the first rounds from 1 to maybe 5 or 6. These rounds are, I think, the key in how you draft. A lot of people, even though I was doing a draft earlier this week, and people talk about trying to take some upside. Upside meaning players that they're not certain to hit, but there's like a high upside. They might hit. And I tend to disagree. In the earlier rounds, especially like 1 through 6, 1 through 7, I'm very safe in my drafts. I pick the safest players, knowing that they have a history, knowing that they are going to produce, knowing that their offense is intact. They have a decent offensive line. Especially with everything that's going on with COVID, we're looking at offensive players missing games, but look, some teams have lost a lot of defensive players. Some teams have lost a lot of offensive linemen. So these things are key that I'm looking into to make sure the player that I'm taking is not going to have issues or bump into issues during the season. So in the first 7 rounds, I'm very safe about my picks. That's my strategy. You don't have to do that. But for me, in the beginning, I'm safe. And towards the end, I'm looking for upside. I'm looking for those high lottery picks, those guys that can hit the ceiling and win possibly some championships. So again, during these last couple of seasons, years, I've developed this kind of strategy in drafting. And so going in the third round, I want to point out some guys to target. So we'll start off so we're in the third round. We're doing 10-team and 12-team leagues. So I'm mixing them up a little bit, but if you heard the other podcasts with the first 2 rounds, again, some of these guys at the end, they fall into the 10-team league, but if you're in the 12-team leagues, they extend to your beginning of the round in your 12-team leagues. So it might be a little confusing, but don't be confused. The names I'm giving out, again, they're trying to pinpoint you direction-wise into picking the right players in these rounds. And so these are the guys that belong for me in the third round or some 10-team leagues in the late second round. So we'll start off with, and I even put him in consideration last time, and this is Le'Veon Bell. I actually took him in this draft that I had this past Saturday. I took him as, I think, my 3rd or 4th pick. Now, Le'Veon Bell, for me, it's not easy to take him because there's a risk, right? But for me, I'm feeling, when I'm taking him, for me, what the safety is, especially I'm playing in the PPR league, he will catch passes. Again, he only had, I think, like 1 touchdown or 2 touchdowns last season. I don't have my stats in front of me. But he didn't have a lot of touchdowns. He didn't do too well on the ground, but he caught passes. For me, I see him just going up this year. There's no room to go back down. He was down last season. He's going to go up. He's a talented running back. Again, the offensive system is not great, so there's still a lot of question marks for me. But for me, out of all the running backs after him, for me, he's still kind of safer than the other ones coming up. Especially, he catches the ball, and they used him last year, and I'm pretty sure they're going to use him this year as well. That's number 1. So I'll go back another running back. This running back, again, this is part of the last running backs for me. After Le'Veon Bell, all the other running backs are in a whole different tier. And so for me, I'm very careful about selecting which running backs I select. So everybody, Le'Veon Bell and everybody I talked to in the second round and the first round, I'm trying to target and get at least 2 of them. If 3 are possible, I'm winning. Because Again, running backs are key, especially with the COVID-19 going into this season. You never know what's going to happen. So I target these running backs. Later on, I'll target some of their handcuffs. But for me, Le'Veon Bell kind of hits the cutoff mark. All right, so I'll be going in, and at number 2, I have Allen Robinson from the Chicago Bears. Again, he did well with Mitch Trubisky. If Nick Foles is the quarterback, he's going to do well. He gets volume. He's a talented player. So he's a really safe pick for me in the 3rd round if I'm looking for a wide receiver. If I already got 2 running backs, he's not a bad first wide receiver to take from me. I have no problem with that at all. So that's number 2, Allen Robinson. Number 3, same kind of scenario, DJ Moore. He's got a new quarterback coming in. Yes, but DJ Moore is another talented wide receiver. He's the number 1 on his team. He will get majority of the targets unless an injury happens or something else happens. So I'm not too worried about that, a new quarterback coming in. One thing I worry about with wide receivers is them going to a new team. But he's already established here. He's established with the team. A new quarterback, Bridgewater, is not a bad quarterback. And especially, DJ Moore can do everything on the field. So he's okay for me, especially in the 3rd round. Again, if I'm looking for a wide receiver and I got my 2 running backs in, he's not a bad first wide receiver to take off the board. Not at all. So he's good. And coming in at number 5, I have Lamar Jackson. Now, in many leagues, he's been taken earlier in the draft. But Lamar Jackson in the middle of the 3rd round is a great pick because he's so safe with his rushing. I think it's going to go down, but I don't think it's going to significantly down for him not to be valuable as a quarterback who rushes in touchdowns, and is throwing in touchdowns. So he's got a lot of potential. He's not going to repeat the amazing season he had last year, but he might come close. So watch out. I don't mind somebody taking him in the middle of the 3rd round. That's a great value right there. But again, he's going as early as round 2. So there you go. At number 6, I have Mike Evans. Oh man, he's fallen. He used to go in round 2, sometimes even there. I remember going earlier, round 1, but he usually goes in round 2. But for me now, he's in round 3 because of Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, again, he's a slot receiver. And again, with Brady, it's a little bit for me the unknown with Tom Brady, how he's going to throw down the field. But Mike Evans, he's also boom and bust. Like, he'll have an amazing games. He's like an Amari Cooper. He's like a Tyreek Hill. He'll go off. He'll win you a week. But he can lose you a week like he did last season, even with Jameis Winston. So I think he's being in the 3rd round, in the middle of the 3rd round, he's okay being there. So I have no problem with him there. So if you're taking a wide receiver, even as a number 1 wide receiver in the 3rd round, for me, he's an okay wide receiver, number 1. He could be great too. So he can just finish as a top 5 wide receiver. All right, and number 7 coming in, I have Robert Woods. And I love Robert Woods. I always loved him. I love USC. But I always loved Robert Woods, even when he was in Buffalo. And when he came to the LA Rams, at times it was like they used him and they didn't use him. He doesn't get a lot of touchdowns. But man, he woke up towards the end of last season. I picked him off waivers. Somebody dropped him in our league. I picked him up. And basically because of him, I made the playoffs. So the LA Rams have changed their offense. In the middle of the season, their offensive philosophy changed. Now that Todd Gurley's gone, I think they're going to go back and use the same offense they had at the end of the season. They used Higbee and Woods a lot. And so I feel like it worked for them in the end of the last season. It's going to work this season. So I have Robert Woods ahead of Cooper Kupp, especially in full point PPR, half point PPR. They're pretty close, but for me, Robert Woods, man, I think he's going to hit. I already took him in one of my leagues. I drafted him. Nobody likes him for some reason. Everybody kind of pushes away from him, but I take him. He's really, even taking him as a number 1 wide receiver. I did this last year. I took Robert Woods as my number 1 number one wide receiver, like in the 5th round. I stacked up on running backs and I took Robert Woods. And look, he got me to a championship. I lost in the championship, but he got me there. So these are some of the things that I'm looking for in wide receivers, especially in the 3rd round. And so coming after him is a similar type of wide receiver. That's Adam Thielen. He had a bunch of injuries last season. It sucked. If I was an Adam Thielen owner, I drafted him in a few leagues. And he could be a great number one wide receiver. He is older, but for me, he's still safe. Him and Kirk Cousins, they've been playing together, so it's not like they're doing this for the first time. So he's going to be Kirk Cousins' first option. That's it. Another good slot receiver. He's great for PPR. So Adam Thielen in the 3rd round, safe pick. As a number one, I'm not sure there yet. Taking him as my first wide receiver, I'd rather have some of the other guys, like an Evans, like a Robert Woods, Allen Robinson. So right there, I'm a little iffy. But if it happens, it happens. I'm okay with it. Especially if I already got 3 running backs or 2 running backs. And Lamar, for example, I get a quarterback or whatever, or even a tight end. I'm okay with taking Thielen as my number one. So it's fine, but then I'll focus more on wide receivers. And number 9, Cooper Kupp. Man, he fell off the face of the planet. I don't know what happened. I had him in a really deep league, keeper league, and then he destroyed my season last because he was my number one wide receiver, and he failed me. So it was a tough season, and I'm really not certain what's going to happen this season with him, but I think he's still going to come back. He gets a lot of touchdowns. So again, Cooper Kupp is targeted in the end zone. Jared Goff looks for him in the end zone. Like Robert Woods, 1 touchdown all season. But Cooper Kupp, a whole different story. So Jared Goff is looking for him in the end zone. So that's where I think he's safe as a wide receiver. Not 1, but if you get him as your second wide receiver, that's great. He will get touchdowns. And he'll give you big games. Hopefully he doesn't bust like he did last year, but he'll give you some good games. All right. And number 10, it's another quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Taking him late in the 3rd round, great value. He's probably going early, middle of the 3rd round, but in the 3rd round, taking Mahomes is great. I had a situation where I'm in a 2-keeper league that we drafted on this past Saturday. My keepers were Kamara in the 6th round, and then I had Josh Jacobs in the 3rd round as my keepers. And what I did before the draft, I traded away my 1st round pick and my 7th round pick to another league mate for a 2nd round and the 3rd round from him. So I ended up having two 2nd rounders and 2 3rd round picks, which for me, I love that area so I could kind of stack up on players. So what I did with one of those picks was take Patrick Mahomes, because I'm like, he's there, nobody was taking him. I usually don't take quarterbacks, but because I made that trade to get additional picks, I took Patrick Mahomes, and I feel like I don't have to stream quarterbacks this year, which is nice. Hopefully he doesn't get injured. But that's what I did. I usually wouldn't do that in a redraft league when there's no keepers. I feel like I need to stack up on running backs. I wouldn't do that, but in this league, I already had 2 running backs. I did take Le'Veon Bell and Julio Jones, and then I took Patrick Mahomes. So for me, that was kind of, I was debating, but I'm like, I got to take him here. I traded up for this pick. I traded away another pick for 2 picks. So here was a great place to take him. I was pretty happy with my draft. So hopefully hopefully he's what he did 2 years ago. So that's what I'm banking on. In 12-team leagues, another 2 players I'll give you guys. And number 11 is Calvin Ridley. And the number 12, Chris Carson, another running back. So at this point, another tier of the running backs, I start with Chris Carson. Again, he's a workhorse. Seattle's going to use him. I don't know how much. He does get injured. He does have that injury history. But I love watching Chris Carson too. He's great. So at the bottom, at the end of the 3rd round, or in the beginning of the 4th round, if you're still looking for a running back, Chris Carson's not a bad guy to take. But going back to Calvin Ridley at number 11, Julio Jones is there. I know that. Hooper is gone. We don't know what's going to happen with Hayden Hurst. And again, Ridley has built a rapport with Matt Ryan. I really think Ridley is up for an amazing season. I mean, I think he's gonna go off. So I couldn't get him in this past draft that I did. I was looking for him, but he was taken early. I have a lot of hope for him. I was trying to trade for him in a dynasty league. That didn't work out. But I think from now on, he's going to be the main guy in Atlanta, especially after Julio Jones retires or he's done. I think Julio Jones has a couple more years left. But Calvin Ridley, man, he's the guy. He's the next guy up. I'm excited for that guy. So those are the guys at the end. Some considerations. Melvin Gordon, if you are looking for another running back, I think he's going to get a lot of work. I know Phillip Lindsay is there, but I think Melvin Gordon will get a lot of end zone work as well. OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., man, how he's falling. So I see him more in the 4th round. And DJ Chark, again, he just came into fruition last year, so I'm not sure what's going to happen, but he's also in the 4th round. So you could tell that in round 3 and 4, there's a lot of value in wide receivers. So that's why my strategy this year is to take a lot of running backs in the first 2 rounds and then spend majority of my 3rd rounds and my 4th round taking wide receivers. So hopefully this helps for round 3, end of round 3 and maybe beginning of round 4. I'll probably do 2 more on round 4 and 5 and the players that are going there. Again, if you guys have any questions, disagreements, any concerns, please hit me up on Instagram. Just trying to build myself up and trying to talk fantasy. I love talking fantasy, so if you hit me up, I'll talk fantasy with you guys all day, every day. So good luck in your draft if you haven't drafted. If you've drafted, focus on the waiver wire, pay attention to the injuries, and make sure your team is stacked. All right? So good luck to you guys. Until next time, take care.
Dude, you better not be sleeping after that podcast. That was an amazing message. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Commissioner. Also subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Any comments, questions, concerns, send them to the Instagram page, The Commissioner, your fantasy football guide.